Trystie's Quest, or Kit, King of the Pigwidgeons. By Greville MacDonald. Chapter 10. A glorious night, Trystie and the Leprechaun. He explains certain things. Trystie's Quest, the Fairy Queen's Garden. Though Trystie did not think she had been asleep at all, and though it was still night, she felt as fresh as a lark in the sunrise. She watched Curdie disappear among the trees in the direction of the river. A good big bit of her longed to go with him back to the farm, but quite as good and big a bit of her was joyfully happy at the thought of seeing her fairy godmother once more. Her dear and strange little captain had disappeared, but she knew she had just to wait till she was called or fetched, and so lay down on her side to watch the irises and globe flowers. She used to tell Kit and the others that nobody ever really saw a flower till it was looked at from below as well as from above. Then she fell fast asleep again, and not much wonder after the long voyage. When she opened her eyes, it was still night time. Except the tiniest glints of it through the thick canopy of beech trees, the moon was hidden. There was light enough, however, for anything but sums and French irregular verbs and darning, and soon there were glowing, radiant colors all around her. The green leaves, the yellow flowers and the red tips of the daisies were all plainer even than in daylight, because they shone even the trunks of the trees with their own particular nature. Shepherds belonging to Downland often see fairy lights on dark starry nights, and believe they are the faint shinings of living things. In tropical countries too, certain fungi shine brilliantly in the dark. But here every living thing was alive in its light and proper colorings, so that the night was full of revelation and mystery. I feel sure that anyone might have seen that Trystie also was shining with her own soul's quiet light. Soon Trystie turned her head and saw Captain Leprechaun kneeling by one of those wax-like fungi, called orange elf cups, and so much used by fairy folk. It was glowing with color. His hood was thrown back and he was washing his face in the dew it held. "Your pardon, princess," he said, jumping up and drying his big face with his red hood. "It's me face I was clanning for fear it will not be the soft water I shall find next time it's dirty." He was taken by surprise, and so spoke with a fuller brogue than he often used. He was particularly careful for the most part to speak correctly to a little English maiden like Trystie. "It didn't look dirty when you came ashore," said Trystie, jumping to her feet and going up to him. "Does mine want washing, please?" "Never at all," he answered positively, after looking up into her eyes for a full 10 seconds. "Never at all, it couldn't, not if it was the chimney you'd been sweeping." They were now walking together through the woods and along a green path by the riverside, which was jeweled with sparks of moss flowers. "Captain," said Trystie, half in fun, "I'm afraid that's Blarney." "Princess," he answered, making his best bow. "When it's the innocent eyes of a real princess, 'tis Blarney's the living truth." Then he proceeded to explain that most fairy people after a trip into Thickland need to wash their faces in the dew before their eyes are quite clear again. But she, he added, had never yet been altogether in Thickland and so would not need her face washed even if she had been sweeping chimneys. "Doesn't soot count in Fairyland?" asked Trystie, not quite understanding, but merrily enough. "Sooty is as sooty does," said the captain. "D'ye think the fairy cobbler's hands will be dirty with his wax? Yet they've made ye a pair of fairy shoon fit for your honoured godmother, good luck to her. By that same token, your captain the leprechaun's hands are just as clean as the new-fledged thistledown. So there's no need to wash the cobbler's hands of the wax at all, not in Fairyland." For a moment Trystie could not think what he meant when he said he had made a pair of shoes for her. But she looked at her feet, and saw upon them the daintiest orange-red shoes, aglow as if light shone through them, and on the instep a shimmering surface looking like the dew in the elf cup, though it did not spill. On one foot this shimmering was shaped like a heart, and on the other like a star. The shoes seemed to go with her nightgown finely, for she had no other clothes on, of course. "You'll now perhaps remember what ye never knew before," said the captain, "that every leprechaun is a cobbler to the fairies. By which, ye must understand that their business it is also to show lost people where treasures are hid, and so they take charge of the springs, and the brooks, and the waterfalls. Sorrow one of them can keep itself clean and tidy without its own leprechaun. Now, can ye believe that your captain knows what's clean and what isn't, entirely?" But Trystie was only half listening. She was entranced with her shoes. "Oh, Captain Leprechaun," she exclaimed, "you're a sweet fairy man to make them for me. May I keep them always?" "It's that same that they're yours for, Princess darling, though one may be in Fairyland and one beyond it. They will keep every stone from hurting your lily feet, and take charge of ye like an angel. It's not cobbler's wax, no, nor soot neither, will ever soil their brightness. Then they walked in silence, Trystie hardly able to keep her eyes off her shoes. Yet she was wondering about washing day in Fairyland and things of that sort. At last she looked at her friend and asked, "But in Fairyland don't you wash soot off, if it should get on anything? If the soot suits anyone, the real pity it is to clean it off of him, princess dear, because you'll find him blacker than ever underneath it." "I thought nothing was black in Fairyland," said Trystie, mystified. "Ye're partly in the right too, princess. Nothing ever will look black to ye but a few things your pretty eyes never could see." Trystie was still more puzzled, but the captain just Trystie's quest sang quietly, as if to himself and not wishing to intrude, this rhyme: "Soot's as plain as summer rain in the darkest night, and the snow would match the crow if it hid the light." The deeper they went into the wood the brighter became the night. But no light now shone from above, only from the living things. Trystie discovered before her visit to Fairyland was over that the kindest things were the shiningest, and that if anything shone very deeply so as to make it beautiful through and through, it was sure to have some very important work on hand for the queen. Some few flowers seemed to shine only in the skin of them. Then, though at first sight the light was soft and pretty, it was very easily put out if anything accidentally rubbed them up the wrong way. Then they looked quite sooty directly and were better left alone for a while. Indeed, these flowers somehow had not yet got body and soul both together into Fairyland, so not even the dew could wash all the thickness off. Trystie thought she would have been content to go on walking for hours and had little need to ask questions of her companion. He was constantly looking up into her face to see if she was happy. His head came no higher than her waist. To Trystie it seemed as if they were going downhill all the way. This puzzled her, because they had certainly at no time gone uphill since landing on the island. So she asked the captain if they were going much deeper, and how it was they had lost sight of the river. "Then sure, I'll tell ye the truth," he answered, "we're in that same river, princess. We're going deeper and deeper into it so as not to keep our heads above water. In Thickland, whether Catholics or Protestants, they're all mighty afraid of drowning, and every one of them, silly idiot, tries to keep his head on top. But it's just the one part of him that's got to drown, to complete his christening, entirely. It's the fear of getting their souls saved that terrifies the life out of them. I'm told they confuse Fairyland with the bad place, and will sell their ignorant souls to a spalpeen of a Pigwidgeon to save their thick bodies." "I didn't know that," answered Trystie, "and I live, most of me, in Thickland. It is sweeter than you think, Captain." She must have been thinking of those she loved so dearly. "I'm sure," she went on, speaking slowly, as if making certain that her words were quite accurate, "I am sure Tom Tit and Jenny Wren were christened quite completely, for they're the darlingest babies in the world." "And happy am I to hear it," exclaimed the gentle captain, with real delight. "Maybe we'll fetch them here in me ship." Then Trystie was naturally alarmed, for she knew what a terrible time they once had had at the farm when Honeypot had disappeared for 3 whole weeks. She felt glad that the fairy ship was all scattered in wings and thistledown, gladder still when she remembered that 4 mountain ash trees now grew in the front garden of the farmhouse, so that only kind fairies could come into the nursery. But she only said, "Your lovely ship is tumbled into pieces." "Never at all," he replied. "It's safe, it will be in the Queen's moat, waiting her will and pleasure." "But," said Trystie, "I saw it all fall down before you jumped out of the wreck of it." "Never is anything wrecked in Fairyland," answered the little man, wagging his big head, "at least nothing that belongs to our blessed Queen. If the thought of the ship's in her heart, why, the ship is restin' on the waters that lap her castle walls. And when it's there, it's wherever she wants it to be." Trystie could understand this, because she had been born in Fairyland even though she had spent so much of her life in the dreadful Goblin town, where the people had rebelled against the Queen and had declared themselves independent. They had so nearly succeeded that they thought they no longer believed in fairies, though actually they held them in greatest dread. They were afraid too of children, and imagined they had discovered a very superior way of bringing them up. In Fairyland, you must know, all the children are born with tiny pearl keys hanging round their necks to keep their little hearts safe. These are the choose keys. The goblins thought that, if the keys were taken off, their owners would never need to choose between good and naughty, and so could be brought up to be good only. The consequences were so terrible to the children that Trystie, who, because her mother had kept her little baby's choose key hidden from the goblin magistrates, had managed to escape from Goblin Town, never forgot their sorry plight. She always hoped she would someday find the iron chest where the stolen keys were locked up, and give them back to the children. Trystie well remembered what horrible creatures these boys and girls born quite sweet and ordinary babies grew up to be. This indeed was Trystie's quest. How far, or for how long Trystie and Captain Leprechaun travelled it is impossible to say, distance and time count for so little in Fairyland. But the wood grew steeper and steeper. Presently their path widened out into an avenue of beech trees, so regularly planted and so stately that their boles were like the columns of a cathedral whose groined roof was made of the branches and leaves. The floor over which they now must pass was like a great garden full of every flower that grows, and, wonder of wonders, they were all dancing in company with shepherd boys, dairymaids, ploughboys, and schoolchildren, besides the woolliest sheep skipping on their hind legs or turning somersaults in their joy. Above were blackbirds, finches, kingfishers, and tits, flying round and round in intersecting circles, all in green jackets the Queen's livery and singing as if their hearts would break for joy. Butterflies of all the rainbow colors, bumblebees, honeybees, fireflies, and hummingbirds, all those gentle winged things who live on the kindness of the flowers, were gathered from every part of the world, and were scattering light and color on the singing birds above and the dancers below. Trystie said this fairy dance and music made her feel as if it must be the great nave of Chichester, with the stained glass windows all come alive for a whole holiday, and the mighty organ pipes changed into fairy recorders like kits. "Princess, dear," said the leprechaun. He had been watching her face very lovingly ever since they reached the avenue. "Princess, dear, this is one of your godmother's gardens. But you must not stay here. The fairy queen is waiting for ye in her audience chamber. So be pleased to close your eyes and take me hand and not open one of them till I bid ye." The child did as she was told. She shut her eyes and held tightly the little hand so hard and firm with its work. For a short space of time all her outside world was dark and silent. End of this chapter.